First of all, if you missed it, there was a moment in a locker room where Dave Doeren may have referred to or referred to UNC as pieces of bleep, the things that we can't say on radio. Mack Brown, during his press conference on signing day yesterday, decided unprompted he was going to address those comments. Here's Mack Brown.
Last ball game with a rival school, after the game, the head coach of that school called our players a piece of shit, and I apologize for that language, but I've never heard something like that before, and I'm disappointed. I thought it was classless. It's not true. Number one, we didn't play well in the game. We didn't coach well in the game. It's been very well documented, and I got that. But you don't call kids a piece of shit. And I've addressed it with our team. I apologize to them. These kids are one of the top academic groups in America. They got an award for AFCA's top 13. They've won a Coastal Division. They've won a bunch of games. They've been to an Orange Bowl, been to 5 straight bowls. They represent us well. And from me speaking for them and their parents, they really didn't appreciate being called a piece of shit. Never heard that before. And very, very disappointing.
All right. So Mack did that. And, of course, you have to give Dave Doeren his chance to reply to the Mack conversation. So here's Dave Doeren, and we'll cut this off when it gets too long. But the full response from Dave Doeren.
Well, you should have heard what I said about myself and my own team after we lost to Duke in that locker room. First of all, when we go to these meetings, we're supposed to get notice that there's a camera in our locker room. And that was not done. And so, I have a lot of regret that was on TV because they shouldn't have done it. When you go into a locker room with your team, that is a private conversation. Unless they ask if they can be in there with the camera, and that was not asked. That doesn't give me an excuse to have that public. But that's what happened. No one told me. And obviously, if I knew I was on camera, my language would not have been what it was. It doesn't make it any better. No. And I did call Coach and apologize because I could have used a lot of different words, obviously. He caught me in a heat of a moment situation in the locker room celebrating a huge win.
All right, we can cut it there. So that's the gist of it. And yesterday, this morning, I heard all of the who's in the right. It's a rivalry. We even did a little bit of it yesterday, right? I actually think kind of both were a little wrong, right? Because Dave Doeren probably shouldn't have used those words as he said. Mack Brown probably should accept the apology, which obviously he didn't. Two wrongs don't make a right. But if we're being even more honest, right? If are we in the trust tree right now? We're not going to tell on each other. Mack Brown and Dave Doeren should put together a little behind-the-scenes agreement to keep this thing going. Do you know why? Because nothing fundraises like outrage. Nothing brings in the dough like outrage. It helps both of them raise money. Now, you might not want to help the other. I get you, right? It's like, why should State worry about helping Carolina? Why would Carolina worry about helping State? Well, guess what? You play a lot of games against teams that aren't that opponent. And unfortunately, if you say something mean about Louisville, it's not going to draw up as much outrage. It has to be these two teams. It has to be this rivalry. Now, if you're asking me, hey, you're the judge, you're scoring the fight ringside, who won that round? I think Dave Doeren won that round. But I've seen enough UNC fans jumping to Mack Brown's defense that it's having a solid effect on them too. Right, there's enough of those classless, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to say the words that I've heard typed and said about NC State, but they're out there. If I'm North Carolina, do you know what I'm saying right now? Hey, listen here, boosters. Listen here, supporters. Listen here, fans. Listen here, Chapel Hill business owners. Listen here, graduates of the great University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, that own big-time businesses and have all this money that is completely and totally unlimited. If you want us to put that foul-mouthed Dave Doeren in his place, you're going to have to donate to our NIL collectives. if you want us to make sure he never calls a University of North Carolina Tar Heel a POS ever again, give to our collectives. Vice versa, too, right? Guess what I'm doing if I'm Dave Doeren? Listen here, NC State alumni. Listen here, fans, supporters. Listen here, everybody that has money that wears the color red in the state of North Carolina. If you want us to keep sticking it to those pieces of bleep, those wine and cheese wearing, donate to our NIL collectives. I'll send you the link if you need to know how to find it. Nothing raises funds like outrage. And part of it is about marketing that rivalry, right? Like, you know, Magic and Bird were in Converse commercials together. They filmed them on Larry Bird's family's farm. Yeah, they were dead set rivals, right? They wanted to see the other lose each and every year. But they could put together their forces for a little business, you know what I mean? Sell a couple sneakers. Like if I'm Dave Doeren and Mack Brown, I'm not letting this thing die. I'm not letting this thing die at all. I'm not trying to be respectful. I'm not trying to be classy. If I'm Dave Doeren, I'm walking up there and going, listen, I called. I apologized. Tried to keep it behind closed doors. If he wants to make it public, he can make it public. But all I know is that every time I've played sports, the winners get to talk a little trash. Drop the mic, walk off. Then send out a link to the Savage Wolves Collective. Like, nothing raises funds like outrage. I talked about it with Florida State, right? Florida State gets held out of the college football playoff. You can go back and find it. You can find it on our YouTube page, 99.9 The Fan. You can find it on our podcast. I said it right here into this microphone the day after the college football playoff rankings were announced. I said Florida State is going to have so much money donated to their program in the next 24 to 48 hours after being eliminated or not chosen for the college football playoff. Not because, they were so good this year. Not because, we feel bad for Jordan Travis. But because they were furious. The fans were outraged, and they should have been. And outrage is a really, 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 really good fundraiser. And depending on what we hear out of this Board of Trustees meeting tomorrow from Florida State, maybe they did raise an absolutely stupid amount of money that's well above and beyond what I thought they could, and maybe they're just going to cut a check to the ACC and bounce. But if that's the case, that just furthers my point that nothing brings in money like outrage. So mutual outrage, if you get NC State outraged at North Carolina, if you get University of North Carolina outraged at NC State, those coaches are both going to take that to the bank. And yes, because they're your rival, do you wish you could raise all that fund all that money without having to also kind of help your opponent? Yeah. But guess what? All that money you raise, Duke isn't raising. Right? All that money you raise off of a Mack Brown, Dave Doeren battle, Louisville isn't raising, Miami isn't raising, Florida State isn't raising. That's your advantage. My parents lived in South Carolina when it was Spurrier at South Carolina and Dabo at Clemson. And I swear they had a section of the sports page reserved for here's what they said this time. And it was always one of them trading barbs with the other, passive-aggressive comments at the other. They were going back and forth. That's when Clemson was building themselves into Clemson, right? That's when they were going from whatever the heck they were under Terry Bowden and everybody else to what they are now under Dabo, which is a two-time national champion. They use that outrage, right? Clemson fans, if you want us to beat that mean old ball coach Steve Spurrier and do things our way, you're going to have to give $20 a person. 4 million of you do it, we might have enough money to put a mini golf course in the locker room and a slide in the locker room. And they have it all, by the way. They have a wiffle ball field in their player facility at Clemson. That was all raised. All that money was raised on the back of we really don't like Steve Spurrier. So Mack Brown and Dave Doeren, who's right, who's wrong, who crossed the line, who's got more class, who cares? Who's got the money? That's what the question really is.